Welcome. If you are a leader, thought leader, and or podcaster, this video is just for you. Today, we're going to be talking about why failure is knowledge and how to apply that to your everyday life. So I'm your host. Welcome to the Phase Knowledge Podcast. My name is Terryl Humphrey. And if you don't have a pen, if you don't have your notebook, I definitely recommend to go and get it because this is going to be a great live. As a matter of fact, let me just turn this one off because it kept doing that yesterday. I don't know why I kept doing that. I digress. Anywho, welcome. Let's go ahead and get it started. This episode is going to be great because not only are there lessons in the failures is something that a lot of people have to experience. So let's get it. First thing first, if you don't have your pen, and first point we're gonna talk about is that you are not a failure. In other words, what this means, oh, you can't even see that. One, of course, my pen. Technical difficulties. 1 second. All right. Let's see. All right, there we go. Technical difficulties. There we go. You are not a failure. So, let's go ahead and get it started. You are not a failure because just because you failed at something doesn't mean you are a failure. What it means is that you are literally learning a skill. Half a decade ago, when the Phase Knowledge Podcast got created, when it got generated, and when it got established, I literally was trying to figure out what the goal was behind it, what I wanted to do, who I wanted to help, and who I wanted to serve. In addition to that, prior to me even launching Failures Knowledge, I literally have failed so many different times in my life. And I remember being in elementary school, I received my first D, like D as in Delta. And I thought my mom was going to get upset with me. I thought I was going to get a whooping. I ain't going to lie to you. But during that moment, my mama taught me that it's okay to fail. She say, son, you just got to do better. You see, when you are in school, these are here called books. You know, to read a book, you got to look at the book. When you're at school, there's a certain requirement that a lot of teachers, professors requires from you. And it's not the fact that a lot of teachers, professors, or anything other nature is bad. It's more so the subject that they're teaching has to be learned and understood fast. I'm a slow learner. In addition to that, I'm a slow learner and it takes me a long time to understand something. Not one time, even when I was young and as I was growing up and becoming the man that I am today, I never felt like a failure. I just felt bad for getting a bad grade. Nonetheless, I never thought I was a failure. In business, when you are starting a new venture, when you're starting a new organization, when you're starting something new, there's going to be trial and different errors. Okay. There's going to be trial and a lot of failures because you have to be willing to fail over and over and over again. When I started to understand, like, hold on, I'm in the podcast production business. Like, I actually have a business behind everything that I'm doing, and it's like, well, you don't have a business until you start having customers and they paying you. In addition to that, as I'm working towards that, there's been so many different failures that I had to experience, from doing my first 90-day challenge when I only made $217 to doing my second challenge when I quit right in between, like in the middle of it was like day 20 or something like that. Then third, fourth, fifth, sixth, all the way up to challenge number 7. It's not the fact that I was a failure. I just was learning the skill. I was learning business. I was understanding the language. When you get into a particular field, you have to be okay with learning everything that you're doing. I'm like, man, this is a lot. You have to learn marketing. You have to learn sales. You have to learn systems. You have to learn like different things that will help you stay afloat in your business. Nonetheless, as you are learning about your business, you are not a failure. You are learning. When you learn, you're going to have to experience different moments when you don't expect. Why? Because the moments just like books teaches you a lesson. It teaches you a lesson. The lesson that it's teaching you is helping you be prepared in life. Why is that important? Hold on, let me come back to the screen. Why is it important? When you are taught something, it has to resonate. It has to make sense. At least for me, it has to make sense. How can I apply this today? Like, for instance, I took an algebra class when I was in college, back in Little Rock, Arkansas. And when I went to this college, the formulas that they was showing us, I'm like, man, that's a lot. I don't understand this. So what I did was I went to the professor and I asked further questions. Like, hey, I don't understand how you got this answer. Do you mind explaining that again? And back in school, in algebra, well, when I went to school and took algebra, they was talking about PEMDAS. I think is what it's called. Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. At the end, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. And you got parentheses. See, I done forgot. Anywho, I digress. That's why I'm not teaching math. Okay, I'm not even talking about math. And what I'm talking about is you have to learn what you are doing. In math, you have to learn how to find the equation. In business, you have to learn how to find the equation. In life, there's an equation that you have to discover, but the equation that you're looking for is the lesson that will help you apply to your business. When I started to discover the equation, which was podcasting, the podcasting became the business became the solution of how I can help others launch, edit, and manage their podcast. In addition to that, notice we're talking about PEMDAS. In addition to that, like you adding to that, is not the fact that the lessons did not make sense. Hold on. Is more so I'm trying to figure out the lessons to apply. I'm not a failure because I don't know everything. In fact, I forgot what PEMDAS actually stand for. Like, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. But every one of them, like, I forgot. I gotta think about it or just look it up. But that's not the point of this video. So I will look it up on my spare time and not right now, because right now we're talking about the importance of failure. It's not the fact that failing is bad. It's more so taking risk. Taking risk. Taking risk leads to gaining knowledge. Why? Because it's something that you have to do in order for you to grow. Risk means that you are willing to try. Risk means that you are willing to learn. Risk means that you are going to fail. But when you fail, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. In fact, it means that you are willing to grow. It means that you're willing to learn. It means that you're willing to fail. You are not a failure because you are not successful today. You are not a failure because you have failed in your life many times. You are not a failure because the plan didn't go as planned as you thought it would go. You are growing, you are establishing, you are becoming better. To learn about business, you have to learn about everything. And for me to learn about everything all at once, it's like, man, that's overwhelming. That's a lot of information. That's a lot of terminology. That's a lot of information that I do not know. And it's understanding. Well, you have to go through the process of understanding what you are doing. When you learn what you are doing, you are learning how to turn that failure into knowledge, because the knowledge comes from the failure. When you try, you are putting yourself out there. When you try, you are learning. When you try, you are trying something new. Risk, we come back to it. Risk leads to new opportunities. And with these opportunities, you are able to have, I'm going to put equals, rewards. And when you have rewards based off the risk, you have turned your failure into knowledge. I wasn't always, in fact, I never was a straight A student. Because the information I'm learning, yes, it might be a lot, but I'm trying to like execute it. I'm trying to go do the work. I'm trying to figure this out. And as I'm figuring it out, I'm literally learning on the go. I wrote a book and it's called Master Your Mind, 10 Tips to Shift Your Mindset. And in the book, one of the chapters, it says that you have to learn as you go. As you learn as you go, you are learning as you grow. Why? Because you are growing the more you learn. The more you learn, the more you know. The more you know, the more you understand. When I started to understand that failure is like a secret ingredient, failure is possible. And just because you fail, it doesn't mean you are a failure. What it does mean that you are willing to learn. As you learn, you become more educated. As you learn, you become more like you take a lot more risk. As you learn, you are able to make a difference. The more educated you become based off the failures that you have or that you have experienced, creates the life that you're looking to accomplish. You see, to have a podcast production business, I have to have a podcast. I have to talk about what I'm doing and express how to do it as well. I'm not talking about things that I'm not doing. I'm not talking about things that I'm not good at. In fact, I forgot about the acronym for PENDAS. Nonetheless, that's okay because that's not my subject. What my subject is around failure, is around knowledge, and is around business. The more you learn, the more educated you become. The more you learn, the more you can help others. The more you learn, the more you've turned your failure into knowledge. Why is that important? That is important because you never know the people that you're going to impact. Somebody told me that you never know who's listening, but just know someone is always listening. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I don't understand what that means. They say they might not respond. They might not send comments. They might not like your videos, but someone is always watching. As they are watching you, they are learning from you. As they learn from you, they are inspired by you. As they are inspired by you, they are literally learning from everything that you're doing. They might not say anything, but they see you. They might not say anything, but they're learning. They might not say anything, but they're growing. But before you help anybody, you got to help yourself. And that's what I've been doing over the last half decade after producing 894 podcast episodes. I was learning the system. The system was being learned, and I learned how to podcast effectively. Why? It's not just about a conversation. I literally just thought about this before I started today. Like, anyone can press record. But the real work starts after you stop recording. The real work starts right after you finish your podcast conversation. The real work starts when no one's there in front of you. And it starts because you have to talk about your business. You have to do your business, and you have to understand the business that you are in. Regardless of the industry, over the last half a decade, what I've learned, regardless of your industry, it don't matter if you're in the restaurant business, don't matter if you're in the real estate business, don't matter if you're in the podcast business, don't matter if you're in the HVAC business. It don't matter the business. You're in the people business. And I read that in one of these books that I've listened to. They said you're in the people business. The founder with McDonald's, and then I watched the documentary as well of grind. No, the book is Grinding It Out, and the movie is The Founder. So why is that important? That's important because the growth comes from the system. The system comes from the plan comes from the execution. You have to be willing to fail, because when you fail, you learn. I'm going to draw this right quick. Hold on. Turn failure into knowledge. When you fail, let's just say failure leads to new information. New information leads. Oh, that don't look like leads. Leads to growth. Why are you growing? Why does it lead to growth? Great question. It leads to growth because it's something that you didn't understand before you understood what you are doing. You can't become educated if you are afraid to fail. You can't gain the experience if you are afraid to take that risk. You can't be afraid to grow if you never take a chance. There's a saying that says, what's that saying? Luck meets preparation, or preparation creates luck, or something like that. In other words, when you are prepared, people say you lucky. But preparation, let's just dive in what preparation actually consists of. Preparation, A-R-A-T-I-O-N, preparation leads to practice. Preparation leads to feedback. Preparation leads to growth. Preparation leads to focus. Preparation leads to lessons learned. Okay, why? Because you are learning what you are doing. Hold on, I won't even share my screen. Hold on. All right, so preparation leads to practice. Practice leads to feedback. Feedback leads to growth. Growth leads to focus. Focus leads to lessons learned. The more lessons you learn, the more you understand. The more you understand, the more focus you have. The more focus you have, the more growth you are establishing. The more growth you establish, the more feedback you receive. The more feedback you receive, the more practice you have to put into. The more practice you put into, the more prepared you are. AI Allen Iverson say he was doing a press release and he was like, we talking about practice? Let me tell you something. When you practice, you are prepared. When you are prepared, it flows naturally. When it flows naturally, you are learning how to turn that failure into knowledge because you have learned how to look at the failure, but change your perspective from the failure. And the next point that we're going to talk about is that you have to learn what the failure means. You have to learn what the failure means. Point number two, learn what the failure means. What I've learned over the last half a decade, hold on, let me come back to the screen right quick. Hold on, all right, there we go. What I learned over the last half a decade, every time I failed, I've learned something new. Like, for instance, when I was taking the military test and I took it 3 times, I took it a lot of times, okay? But I got in, okay? Just clarify that I got in. The goal was to get in, not to score a 90, okay? When I took the test the first time, I thought I studied enough to take it. But then when I took it the second time, I still failed. But I'm like, man, I really put effort into it. When I took it the third time and I passed, and I was like, whew, it gave me a sense of relief. When I passed that test, it taught me something. It taught me that every failure that I just experienced taught me something new. It revealed something new, and it was something I needed to work on. What does the failure mean? The failure means lack of preparation. Failure means lack of understanding. Failure means lack of practice. And when I started to understand that I'm not a failure, my technique was off, my understanding was off, my knowledge was off. And due to the fact of me failing, I learned how to prepare effectively, how to be more efficiently as I'm preparing. So when I went back for the last time to take the ASVAB test, my hands was sweating. I was so nervous because, man, I'm like, I hope I pass this test. I hope I pass this test. I thought I was prepared. I understood it, and I thought I had a lot of practice. What the failure did to me is that it taught me how to prepare even more. Yes, I might have practiced. Yes, I might have studied, but it probably wasn't enough. Yes, I probably put time to the side, yet it wasn't enough time. You see, there's so many different ways to look at failure. Instead of me looking at as myself as the failure, what work was I doing that caused me to fail? In business, the reason why I failed the first 6 times is because I kept doubting myself. Like, is this actually a business? Can I actually help people in their podcast, or do I know how to? It's the learning that takes the time. And when it takes the time, there's a lot of failure that's going to come from that. What it's doing is that it's actually helping you learn how to solve a problem. In business, you have to solve a problem. If you're not solving the problem consistently, you're not in business. I wasn't in business because I didn't know what problem to solve, nor if I knew how to solve the problem. So that failure taught me how to solve this problem. It is a problem because a lot of podcasters want to grow their impact. I think that's my message now. A lot of podcasters want to grow their impact, but they don't know how to. I struggle with that. I used to struggle with not being able to grow my impact. Nonetheless, as I learned from the failures that I recently experienced, the growth that I have today is based off the growth that I established over the years. Why is that important? It's important because if I want to be in business helping podcasters grow their impact, I have to be the example of growing my impact first. When you have impact, check this out. When you have impact, you have preparation. When you have impact, you have understanding. When you have impact, you have practice. You have to practice when there is no one on you alive. You have to practice when there's no one listening to your podcast. You have to practice when no one is commenting. Why? Because when people start to see you consistently, they start to say, man, this person is good. Man, I want to get onto their podcast. Man, this person is consistent. And I actually got that, but I just didn't know how to proceed it because I'm like, man, is it working? Every failure has a lesson, but you have to learn from the failure to know what it means. When you know what it means, you can literally prepare to overcome the challenges. And so I give you a prime example. I'm learning about sales right now. And yesterday I got a lot of feedback around sales. And that was like, well, you're getting people to the webinar and people sign up, people are coming. That's good. The challenge comes from you closing. You're not closing because you're not discovering the problem that they have. The problem that they have should be in your practice. The problem that you have should be in your process. The problem that they have should be a solution that you solve. But then I'm like, man, what's that solution? What's that solution? The solution was more than what I thought it was. It was something that I recognized the problem was. I just didn't really put time towards it. I didn't put time towards it because I got overwhelmed. I'm like, man, there's a lot of setting up to do. In addition to the overwhelmness, I wanted to make sure I had the messaging right. Like whenever somebody asks me what I do, it's so many different things. I can't even remember everything that it was, but it was a lot of things. Now, what I'm leaning more towards is helping podcasters grow their impact. It was helping podcasters grow their audience, but when I had a sales call yesterday, like the way he was communicating with me helped me. Like, hold on, what about impact? Impact, like people want to make impact. What if your impact grows because of your podcast? What if your podcast grows because of the impact that you are establishing with people? It blew my mind. I was like, oh, that makes sense. But if I didn't fail the first 6 times of trying to grow podcast business within the next 90 days, I wouldn't have understood the lesson that was in front of me. You see, when you learn what failure means, you are gaining the knowledge, you are gaining the perspective, you have the practice to understand what you are doing. You are not a failure, you are learning how to be better. You are not a failure. You are learning how to manage your business. You are not a failure because you are learning how to turn that failure into knowledge. It's not the fact that you have failed. It's the fact that you gave up on the failure. Hold on. You see, I had to learn while being in business, it's not just about doing the work. It's more so about doing the work strategically. There's a plan behind everything. If there's no plan, there's no roadmap. When there's no roadmap, there's no plan. When there's no plan, there's no roadmap. Why? Because it has to go in sequence. Everything that you have to do when you pull up to the light is going to tell you to keep straight, or it's going to tell you make it right, or it's going to tell you make it left. If your destination is not set, your plan will be all over the place. Why? Because when you get to the light, and if your address is already set, as you get to the light, it's already directing you to go straight. Your path might not be clear, but when you have a plan in place, you will know what direction to go. Every failure teaches you something different, and every lesson you learn is going to help you grow. Not just as a person, but as a business owner, as a creator, as a operator, as everything that you're doing. Every failure teaches you something different, yet the lessons that you're learning from it, you are becoming better. That's the last point I want to hit on. Hold on. Let him cook. That's the last point I want to hit on. Is that point number 3? Make sure it's the right one. Point number 3, failures are wins. And what this means, what this means is that failures are wins, is that you are trying. You are doing. There's a lot of people who are afraid to try anything. There's a book called Grit, Grit, if I'm not mistaken. And in this book, they talk about having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And what the difference is that a growth mindset consists of positive thinking. Let's just say positive thinking. Positive thinking. And what is called fixed mindset. Shout out to my publisher as well. She actually said this, and I didn't understand what she meant by this. However, now I understand. So shout out to my publisher, Noah Publishing House. If y'all want to publish y'all book, go work with her because they are phenomenal. So fixed mindset leads to negative thinking. Okay, what does this actually mean? It means when I was listening to the book, it gave me a different perspective. I was like, oh, this is real. This is something that's that a lot of people struggle with. They said a lot of people are afraid to try things because they are afraid to be embarrassed because they don't know what they're doing. That is a fixed mindset because you never know what you're going to learn until you try to do it, until you gain the lesson from it. Failure is so scary because people don't want to be embarrassed behind it. But is it really embarrassment, or you just learning how to do something? Is it really embarrassment, or you gaining the skill? Is it really embarrassment, or you just learning? You see, I started to look at things differently because over my life, I failed a lot. A lot of things did not go my way as I thought they would go my way. And that's okay. I needed to fail so I can learn what I needed to do differently. And so throughout this journey, throughout this process, there's so much discovery of self that I had to go through. It was like, man, what are you doing? What's working? What's not working? What can I be doing consistently? What can I be doing often? Through this process, I'm able to grow. Through this process, I'm able to understand. Through this process, I'm able to have a growth mindset. Growth mindset is thinking positively. Having a fixed mindset is thinking negatively. Why? Because when you think negative, you think the failures doesn't make sense. The failures is going to ruin your life, or the failure is just something that's not fair. Life isn't fair. Just because it's not fair doesn't mean that you can't have a different perspective behind your thoughts, behind your growth, behind your understanding. You see, failure is not bad. Failure is the starting point. Failure is the growth lesson. Failure is what's going to help you really achieve what you are looking to accomplish. There's a woman named Sarah Blakely, and she's a phenomenal entrepreneur. She talks a lot about failure. And when I was listening to her interview, she proceeded to say, she was like, her dad talked a lot about failure. Whenever she came home and had her report card, her dad would ask her, what did you fail at? Excuse me. I thought that was interesting. I'm like, what did you fail at? Excuse me. I thought the parents supposed to be encouraging. I thought the parents supposed to be enlightened. I thought the parents supposed to be like forward thinking. What did you fail at? Then as she gave the explanation behind it, I'm like, that make a lot of sense. I have the same perspective. It's not that the failure is bad. It's more so the failure should teach you something. Many times in life, the failure does the opposite, because failing is a bad feeling. Failure is embarrassing. Failure is overwhelming. Failure is all these different characteristics that you want to describe it as. Nonetheless, when you look at failure differently, you're looking at yourself different. Because when you look at yourself different, you're able to grow, you're able to learn, and you're able to implement the risk that you're taking, that you're learning about. Until you do that, you're going to always have a negative perspective behind everything that you're doing. Failure is not bad, because failure is meant to teach you something. And once it teaches you something, it's meant to help you grow. But how do you grow? How do you get started in business? Go do something. When I started in 2021, I started to cut hair. I literally was like, I was in the Marine Corps. I had a plan. I was like, all right, cool. This is what we're going to do. We about to go to this place. It was during COVID. The world was shut down. Everybody cannot go get a haircut. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? I had the idea to go buy some clippers. I bought some clippers and I started to cut hair. I wasn't even charging a lot of money, but I made $1,000. When I made $1,000, I was like, ooh, this different right here. It's different because I had to go do something. Then when I had that $1,000, I used that $1,000 to start the Phase Knowledge. It wasn't podcast during that time, but it was the Phase Knowledge brand, a clothing brand. And I started to sell those. The first shirt that I have is not behind me, but the first shirt that I had came from a plan. I'm going to cut hair, and since I don't really like being on my feet that long, and it takes me 2-3 hours to cut hair, I'm going to try to pivot and do something differently. And I did something differently. I started the clothes, I started selling, and I sold. And I didn't know it was called selling during that time. I just thought it was called making some extra money. As I started to really see what's working and not working, it all came from the failure. Like, you never know what failure is going to lead until you know the failure that you are experiencing. The failure that I experienced was like, man, maybe I ordered too many shirts. Maybe the shirts that I had, it was just a one-time transaction. But what if the shirts that I had was meant to teach me about business? You never know. Oh yeah, I was like, you can't even see it. You never know what this failure is going to teach you, but you have to have an open mind to learn what the failure can teach you. When they gave me proof, I was like, oh, it actually works. But what's working? I don't know. Now let me start learning about everything that I'm doing. And so, in conclusion, just to recap everything that we talked about. So this video was about failure is knowledge. First thing that we talk about is that you are not a failure. You have just failed doesn't mean you are a failure. You're just learning something. You're just trying something new. And the next point that we talked about was that you have to learn what the failure means. Every failure has a meaning behind it, but you have to learn and identify what that meaning is to you, not to anyone else, but to you. And when you do this, you're going to look at the failure differently. And the last thing that we talked about is that you have failure or wins. A lot of people are afraid to try. If you try and failed, celebrate that, because a lot of people don't even try and fail. The book Grit, Grit, I definitely highly recommend, because it explains the concept that I went over as far as having a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. Great book, definitely recommend. And one last thing before, you can't even see that, but one last thing before we end. You're one failure away from changing your life, so don't be afraid to fail, because you can always learn something new. Hit that follow button, hit that subscribe, and make sure you watch the following videos to learn more about business and how to implement the action for yourself. I appreciate y'all. See y'all next time.